Is the door locked? We're good.
Yep.
And Bob, you want to start for a couple seconds drawing Turnout Tuesday on the board?
You too. Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Turnout Tuesday. It's good to be back on Facebook Live. I know that many of you tuned in for the Resistance Report last year, but if you're new to our Facebook page, welcome. And to everybody who has been following along from the start, thank you. With the midterm elections just 6 weeks away, the purpose of these broadcasts is going to be to keep you informed and engaged ahead of November 6th. So remember to tune in at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday from now until Election Day. We're going to try to provide you with the information you need, the encouragement you need, what you need generally to put some constraint on the catastrophe now in the White House. I want to begin, by the way, with the biggest news of the day, the latest on Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. And Brett Kavanaugh could be, one of the worst Supreme Court nominees in modern history in terms of being somebody who is absolutely the worst representative of what America needs. I mean, he is a privileged white male who has a history of, or at least alleged history. Let me just say it this way. Mitch McConnell and Republicans in the Senate are going on the offensive in light of another allegation of sexual assault against Kavanaugh. Mitch McConnell, let's just do a little Mitch McConnell, just so you know exactly who I'm talking about. Mitch McConnell, who always looks like he's been run over by a frog. On the Senate floor, McConnell again vowed to hold a vote without an FBI investigation of the claims. Last week, he pledged to plow right through with the confirmation. Trump is calling the allegations a con game being played by the Democrats. Can you imagine Donald Trump calling anybody else playing a con game? The con artist of the decade, of the century. Now, here it is. From the start, Senate Republicans had already turned Kavanaugh's confirmation into a charade, procedurally. I mean, they've turned a blind eye to Trump's scandals, withheld thousands of documents from Kavanaugh's days in the Bush White House, and they rushed hearings before the midterms, despite delaying President Obama's nominee for months, for 8 months. Their refusal to allow the FBI to investigate these sexual assault allegations, well, this is just the nail in the coffin of any pretense of a fair process. It's also worth noting that there are no Republican women on the Senate Judiciary Committee, just Republican men. In other words, a group of white men will essentially decide Kavanaugh's future. And Kavanaugh on the court is going to likely be the swing vote. If there's going to be a repeal or a reversal of Roe versus Wade, it is Kavanaugh. That's why the social conservatives are so excited about him. That's why the Republicans want to make sure he is on the court. There's one other reason, though, that I want to get to. The GOP's handling of these allegations and their willingness to disregard the Me Too movement could have big political consequences for the midterms. Since Trump's election, millions of women across the country have gotten directly involved in politics, making their voices heard against the misogyny and sexism that have been let loose across America. 240 women have won their primaries. And of that 240 women who have won their primaries, 200 of them are Democrats. In the Senate, a record 19 women have won their primaries. If Democrats pick up 3 seats in the Senate, they will secure a majority in that chamber, something that would have seemed nearly impossible just a few months ago. But with this great wave, it's not just a blue wave. Think of it as a wave of women who have had enough, basically, and a lot of men who are supporting them. The key races are in Arizona, Texas, Tennessee, Nevada. So if you live in one of these states or know people who do, make sure they are registered to vote and that they, in fact, do vote. Now, meanwhile, Trump appears to be on the brink of firing Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. This is something that has been expected for a long time. It's a big deal because Rosenstein supervises Special Counsel Robert Mueller, so firing Rosenstein would clear the way for Trump to fire Mueller. Remember, just 2 weeks ago, Trump's campaign manager, Paul Manafort, his former campaign manager, agreed to cooperate with Mueller's investigation after being charged on multiple counts of bank fraud. Rosenstein is in the hot seat because last week the New York Times reported that Rosenstein discussed invoking the 25th Amendment to remove Trump from office after the firing of FBI Director James Comey. Now, what I find this astounding, not because it reveals disloyalty by Rosenstein to Trump, as Fox News and Trump's allies suggest. What's astounding about this is because Rosenstein, even considering invoking the 25th Amendment or trying to round up enough people in the administration to call for a 25th Amendment operation procedure, confirms, along with Bob Woodward's new book and the anonymous op-ed in the Times, that Trump, the President of the United States, is so dangerously unhinged that the people around him have been talking about how to legally remove him under the 25th Amendment. So, how does Rosenstein's future relate to Kavanaugh's confirmation? Connect the dots. As a judge in the Federal Appeals Court for the District of Columbia, Kavanaugh has offered a very broad interpretation of presidential power, executive privilege, which could ultimately shield Trump from Mueller's investigation. In an article for the Minnesota Law Review, Kavanaugh argued that a president should be exempt from criminal investigations. He's even suggested that a president has the right to refuse to provide evidence to congressional investigators. And so you've got somebody who Trump has nominated. Here's our president. And I just have to give him his recognizable hair. Somebody who Trump has nominated largely because of his views about presidential power. So with Kavanaugh's nomination now on the line, Trump's insurance policy against the Mueller probe is also in jeopardy, which could be why Trump is now putting pressure on Rosenstein. You see all of these connections. It makes a lot of sense. Meanwhile, Republicans in Congress continue to refuse to pass legislation to protect Mueller and Rosenstein, claiming there's no need. They've sacrificed their oversight authority to cater to Trump's whims and please their donors with tax cuts. Which brings me to you. I mean, if you care about democracy and the rule of law, we've got to flip the House on November 6th, the day after the election. Trump could easily fire Mueller. He has said that he will not fire him until the election, which implies that he will fire Mueller, or certainly could fire Mueller, right after the election and end the investigation altogether before Mueller reveals his findings. If that happens, we've got to have a Congress in power willing to continue the investigation, follow the facts, protect the information that Mueller has gathered. So what can you do exactly? This election will come down to turnout. We've got to remain mobilized and engaged as we head into the final weeks until Election Day. Now, I understand you may be exhausted by the constant barrage of news and what's been going on for almost 2 years, but we can't succumb to cynicism. This is your opportunity to fight back directly. This is your opportunity to express your right to constrain Donald Trump and his enablers. This election has got to be a complete repudiation of Trump and all he stands for. And that starts at the voting booth with you. If you aren't registered to vote, make sure you do so today. The registration deadline is quickly approaching in dozens of states. Please don't be left out this year, especially. Go to, and I'm going to give you a particular site. It's indivisible.turbovote.org. To register. If you're not registered, go here. I'm going to hold it here so you can write this down. Indivisible.turbovote.org. And this will enable you. It'll tell you exactly how to register, where to register. You can put your state in. It'll give you all of the information you need. Now, if you are already registered and you want to absolutely double check your registration, you don't have to do this. But if you want to double check your registration and you plan to vote, here's another very important link. This is headcount.org. Verify-voter-registration. I'm going to hold this up again or continue. Headcount.org, verify-voter-registration. This is if you just want to be absolutely sure you are registered. If you live in a pure blue or a deep red state or district, call friends and family in purple districts to encourage them to vote as well. This is all hands on deck. Every race matters. Every vote counts. In the meantime, we also need to keep up the pressure on the Senate to allow the FBI to investigate the sexual assault allegations against Brett Kavanaugh. The number for the Senate switchboard, and don't for a minute believe that calling has no effect. It does, particularly if you are calling in the state for which you are being represented by a particular senator. But the switchboard of the Senate is 202-224-3121. I'm going to repeat that. I feel like this is an infomercial. Call the Senate, 202-224-3121. Now, I know this is a lot, but democracy depends on all of us. So please, please help strengthen it. This is our opportunity. Now for your questions. And we have been taking down some of your questions. Greg Zimmer, if you're out there, if you know Greg Zimmer, tell him that I answered his question. Greg, even if you're not there, what happens if Trump fires Rosenstein? Will Republicans in Congress take action to stop him from firing Mueller? Greg, it's all politics. It's completely politics. I mean, right now, according to the polls, and Republicans are reading the same polls that you can read, right now, about 65 to 70% of Republicans, registered Republicans, are still supporting Donald Trump. Now, in close races, as the national opinion, favorabilities for Trump continue to drop, in some of these closer states, in the closer races, we're going to see Republicans in the Senate possibly try to distance themselves from Trump. And a lot of that depends on what you do. A lot of that depends on what pollsters are picking up over the next few weeks. But if there is no real movement in terms of public opinion or the likely voters for Trump, then Republicans are going to do exactly what they have been doing for almost 2 years now, and that is being complicit. They are essentially not willing to take Trump on. They're not doing their jobs. Jeanette Beckdold, should Kavanaugh be confirmed without an FBI investigation? What further steps can the American people take to ensure justice is served? Well, Jeanette, I don't think Kavanaugh should be confirmed without an FBI investigation. And it's not just precedent. I mean, even Anita Hill had an FBI investigation. But it's also in terms of the Supreme Court. I mean, we all have an interest in a Supreme Court that is respected. It's respected for being nonpartisan, for being neutral, for being a part of government we can trust. And if Kavanaugh gets on the court, and certainly if there's no FBI investigation of the allegations against him, there is going to be even heightened distrust for Kavanaugh and for the court itself. I don't remember a time when the Supreme Court was as polarized and politicized as it is right now. It depends for its legitimacy on people trusting it. And you put somebody on there like Kavanaugh, who already has a low trust level. You don't investigate anything about him. Mitch McConnell basically breaks every rule to get him on the court, including not paying any attention to Obama's Supreme Court nominee for 8 months. Well, what kind of trust is the Supreme Court going to have? So, yes, we do need an FBI investigation. And the court, the Supreme Court, and Kavanaugh needs an FBI investigation. I'm sort of surprised Kavanaugh is not himself asking for an FBI investigation. I mean, if he were really the kind of nonpartisan actor we would expect and want on the court, we would want him to demand an FBI investigation. Gail Grashko. Gail, did I pronounce it correctly? What can be done to make your vote count in a gerrymandered district? Gail, a couple of things you can do. I mean, first of all, if you are in a gerrymandered district, a district that is gerrymandered against your party, what you need to do is even work harder to make your vote count. That is, don't give up. The worst thing you can do is give up. There are now at the Supreme Court, and this is another reason why Kavanaugh's Supreme Court nomination is so important, the Supreme Court has before it a big case where 3 states are before the court on the issue of partisan gerrymandering. And one piece of evidence they're going to be looking at is the distance or the disjuncture between the number of people who are voting for a particular party and the outcome of an overall election. I mean, in North Carolina, for example, only 51% of the people voted last time for Republicans, but Republicans got out of North Carolina, in terms of the House, something in the order of 8 out of 10 House seats. So what the Supreme Court is going to be doing is looking at that disjuncture. That means that your vote, if you are in a gerrymandered district that is gerrymandered against you, becomes even more important than otherwise. So vote. Don't be cynical. That's what they want, your cynicism. Martin Levinson, will young people vote? Martin, very important question. Young people between the ages of 18 and 29, to me that's young. Young people are more progressive, they're more diverse, they are the largest voting bloc in America as a bloc. About 30% of the eligible voters in the United States are young people, millennials, and below them, Generation Z. But they don't vote very much. I mean, the last midterm election, only about 16% of young people actually voted. If we can get that up, if you are young, please vote. If you know young people, if you are a parent of a young person, if you are a grandparent of a young person, if you have nieces and nephews, urge them to vote. Turnout is the issue. Turnout is critically important. That's why we're doing this. We're calling these Turnout Tuesdays. Turnout is going to be the key to this election. And if minorities and young people and women turn out in the numbers that I hope we can count on, then we're going to see both the House and the Senate flipped, and we're going to have a countervailing power to Donald Trump that will constrain Donald Trump in the last 2 years of his presidency. Suri Mills, how is the Democratic Party supporting women getting into the political arena and having true representation? Well, as I said, there are 240 women who have won their primaries. 200 of them are Democrats. Democratic Party, I think, has done a very credible job getting women and responding to women. The thing that I remember so well, even in the 1990s when I was Secretary of Labor, being in the well of the House of Representatives for example, the State of the Union addresses, and looking over at the Republican side and seeing nothing but white men. That was it. At least, even in the 1990s, there were women and there were young people and there were people of color who were Democrats. Today, there are many more women and young people and people of color who are Democrats and in the House and hopefully in the Senate. But again, I think the Democratic Party has done a credible job. It could do much more, but it's up to you to push the Democratic Party to do even more. Again, voting is it. Voting is, and turnout is the issue. We've come to the end of the amount of time we have. I want to thank, behind the camera, Omri Shir Dalal and Shada Ezemian and Andrew Santana. Enormous help. I can't do this myself, obviously. And I also want to thank you for tuning in. See you next week for our next Turnout Tuesday.